Hello, everyone. This is Katie Roper with Caring.com. Welcome to the latest in our Digital Marketing Academy series of webinars. It's called Get the Scoop, Effective and Ethical Competitive Intelligence Gathering. As usual, before we get started, I want to take care of a few housekeeping items. This is a one-way webcast. You can't talk to us, but you can type questions into the question panel on the right-hand side of your screen, and we do encourage you to ask questions. I have two wonderful co-presenters today, and please do ask them anything that you would like more information on. We'll get to as many questions as we can on the webinar, and if we run out of time, we'll be sure to follow up with you directly afterwards and get those answered for you. Also, as usual, we will send out the presentation within a few business days. So you'll get both a recording of the webinar and links to the presenter's slides, and those will be sent to you without you needing to ask. And you should feel free to forward those to colleagues as well. This is a public webinar, so it's fine to forward information around. Our agenda today, I am going to introduce Scott Townsley and Lana Peck, who are co-presenting with me today. Lana will then cover how do you do competitive intelligence seeking online, and Scott will cover how do you do competitive intelligence seeking, as my teenagers would say, IRL, or in real life, and then we'll cover over your questions. You get a quick commercial as a reason to listen in on the webinar. Caring.com, your host today, is the #1 senior care resource. If you're not already working with us, I hope you'll consider it. We get over 3 million monthly visitors, all of them in various stages of caring for an elderly loved one. We do our best to screen and qualify, find the ones who need your services right now, and pass them along to partners. As an added bonus today, you get an extra Caring.com commercial after Lana's section, so you can get excited about that. I have had so much fun putting together this webinar with Lana and Scott. I have already learned a ton just working with them getting ready, and I'm thrilled to be able to share that with you. Both have over 20 years of experience in senior housing. Lana Peck is NIC's seniors housing subject matter expert. She has been in market research exclusively for the senior living industry and has master's degrees in both business and gerontology. So she is terrific, and I'm very excited to hear what she has to say today. Scott has also got over 20 years of experience in the senior living field. He's a professor right now at the University of Maryland in Baltimore County, where he teaches the Management of Aging Services Master's Degree Program. His specialty is strategy for senior housing companies, and his presentation is also just terrific. So I'm really excited to hear what my co-presenters have to say. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Lana. Give us a minute here, and I'm going to give her the keyboard and mouse so that she can drive. Okay, Lana, you're on.
Great. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Let's see here. Katie, I'm having some trouble driving.
Okay, try it now. I see your cursor, so click. Is it not working? Huh, okay.
Working.
Well, I will drive for you then.
Okay, sounds great. Well, I don't know about you all, but when I hear the words competitive intelligence, I tend to start thinking about corporate spy games. And you know, competitive intelligence is actually a very ethical, simple, and valuable research tool that we use to support and lend validity to our marketing strategies. So whether you're putting together a marketing plan or planning to open expansion, it really helps to have as much information as possible about your target marketplace. In our time together today, I'm going to do kind of a show and tell with regard to some of the methods and sources for legally and ethically collecting information about the strengths, the weaknesses, and even the future plans of your competitors that will help you to monitor trends within your competitive environment. And I'll be focusing exclusively on seniors housing data. I'm going to exclude the skilled nursing care data with the aim of giving you some tips for gathering information from perhaps unconventional sources that are publicly available and can be obtained online or with a phone call. So I'm also at the very end going to show you some simple ways to organize your data for presentation to management in a clear and concise way. Next slide, please. So, best practices. First, you need to know what you're looking for. I know myself, and I can go down a rabbit hole pretty quickly chasing interesting bits of information, and that can really take you off course, especially in the internet. So some best practices I followed throughout my years in market research always starts off with answering the most basic of questions. What is it that I need to know? So as you're doing this, ask yourself, what's happening in your marketplace? Is occupancy down at your community because of brand new competition, perhaps? Is your neighbor planning to add a memory care building? Ask who's offering your prospects discounts and incentives if you're drawing them away from you. And thinking about why the information you need will be available should lead to sources. For instance, if your competitor down the street is planning an expansion, pick up the phone and contact your municipal planning and zoning board. Ask them when they're going to break ground, how many units are planned. Also, if competitors started offering new services or additional contract offerings that you've heard of through the grapevine, you can always do a web search with your State Department of Insurance, the Department of Social Services, or Department of Aging, depending on what your state calls its agency. Next, you need to be sure that you think like your customer to gather the most salient information, and finally, make a plan to get organized. The task may seem overwhelming, especially if you have multiple competitors, but a good plan of organization will go a really long way. Some more best practices, and I know this is very basic information, this advice is, but always start with the competitor websites. However, keep in mind that the amount and quality of information on senior living community websites can be hit or miss. More often than not these days, though, seniors and their families not only want transparency, but seniors and more often their adult daughters are shopping for communities online. So communities are posting current prices and incentives more and more often. Do comb your competitors' websites for press releases that aren't published in the Senior Housing News or in your local business journal. Review community photos and floor plans. Find out why those new renovated townhomes, what they look like inside. And often overlooked, don't forget to dive into your competitors' corporate websites if they have them to uncover broad philosophies and other corporate strategies. Next, you want to be sure that you're keeping track of social media. Nowadays, there are many companies feel that it's very important to interact with their prospects and the resident family members through Facebook, for instance. In fact, a recent joint study by ASHA and Leading Age of marketing executives at senior living communities all over the country revealed that nearly all of them believe that Facebook is the best medium for communicating with employees or with customers. Yelp ratings and Google reviews also offer insight, and LinkedIn holds information on employees, and job postings should not be ignored. And be sure to make time of your day to read the news. Blogs and discussion forums especially tend to yield insider information, and consider paying for information. Not all information we know is free, and just because you can't find what you're looking for with a Google search or an alternative, perhaps more creative method, there are really a number of very reputable subscriber services, pay-to-use databases, and news aggregators that can provide really high quality and extensive information that's often tends to be kind of time consuming and very hard to compile. So dig deep. An actionable competitive analysis will tell you which of your competitors are doing well and which are struggling. For example, you may be wondering if all of your competitors are having trouble selling that studio apartment, or is it just your community? The data that you're going to gather can help you determine strategy for boosting sales of those units, whether it means offering incentives or reconfiguring some or all of them into perhaps one-bedroom apartments. And finally, I can't stress this enough, you need to hone in on your key competitors. Don't try to analyze too many or irrelevant competitors. You need to focus your efforts only on those communities you regularly go head-to-head with when you're competing for the same residents. That will really help to eliminate the noise that tends to be distracting from what's most important. It's a big job. So now for the show part of our time together, what are some examples of public data sources? Well, we've talked a little bit about the tried and true, like community websites and seniors housing news, but there may be other sources of information that can be tapped. For example, one of my favorite go-to sources are municipal securities filings. They're excellent sources of disclosure statements and financial forecasts that can lead to competitor data, current pricing, and even occupancy forecasts, so they're great. Another source of information about a new development or a renovation is architect and builder websites. They often showcase their projects and pictures online, and they sometimes include community common space square footages. They often include renderings, unit sizes and unit counts. They may also describe the aesthetic the architect envisions can help point you towards how the new community is going to be positioned. And while random web searches aren't terribly useful, you may want to plug the community or corporate name into a search engine and include a common file suffix. In my experience, and I have to say it doesn't always work, but I found that if you put in your community name with a .xls or a .pdf, I found marketing presentations, Excel worksheets, and internal documents online this way. It's hit or miss. Okay, the disclosure statement. And I'm sure many of you know disclosure statements can be considered the gold standard in seniors housing competitive analysis. It's a literal treasure trove of information. And I highly recommend always trying to obtain a disclosure statement because it will often contain the community's residency agreement, occupancy history, unit counts and square footages, detailed services and amenities, healthcare provisions, and all in one neat package. Here's another example of the kind of data you can find in a disclosure statement or even a municipal bond statement document. This one is showing the number of occupied beds in detail, occupancy, rent, and revenues from a community's assisted living or memory care facility. And here's just another view of a disclosure statement. This is showing current entrance fee and monthly fee pricing for an independent living community. And it also includes a few paragraphs of contract details such as the entrance fee refund policy, the monthly fees, and the rental plan. And finally, to find disclosure statements on the web, a Google search for disclosure statements in quotes often yields results when including the community name or a corporation name. Sometimes a license number works too. So you can find disclosure statements online as well. Okay, this is Emma, and this is one of my favorite sources for finding municipal bond statements. Emma is an electronic municipal market access search engine for the Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board, and it's a good source for disclosure statements. The MSRB is a regulating body that creates rules and policies for investment firms and banks, and in the issuing of municipal bonds, notes, and other municipal type securities by states, cities, and counties. So it's a lot of documentation in this tool. Now I want to add from my personal experience that the Emma search engine can be finicky and kind of difficult to work with. I found in the past that I've had to input the corporate name or a foundation name instead of the community name, for instance. But I do recommend a check with this tool because of the quality information it can provide.
Lana, this is Katie. I'm going to jump in here and just let everybody know that we will put links to all of these websites on our blog. That's partners.caring.com. And when we send them out, you can just, with one click, get to that, so you don't have to worry about writing everything down.
Thanks, Katie. This is the last thing I'm going to show you about the Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board documentation in Emma. I wanted to show you just a screenshot of the first page of the bond documentation. I know it can look a little bit intimidating and maybe even irrelevant at first glance, but combing through the document, really combing through it with an eye to what you're looking for can really reveal a treasure trove of information. So don't be intimidated or put off by this giant document of technical and financial looking information. Also be sure to look for state, local, and federal government websites. This one I'm showing is from the state of California. I think it's relatively new, but it is nearly a one-stop shop for planning and development information. This example, you don't want to pass up on the cost of living comparison worksheet on a competitor website. A lot of them do have them these days, comparing living at the community versus staying at home. You can often determine what services are included in the fees just by reviewing this calculator. For example, from this I can tell that the community includes maintenance and some housekeeping, but I know that I'm going to have to go and dig deeper to find out how frequently that housekeeping is given. And I also can tell that it offers all utilities included in the fees. Additionally, the ability to apply the averages is very helpful. Next is job boards. It's a little bit unconventional. Search job boards on various platforms such as Monster. LinkedIn also has a good job platform, and others can reveal really good quality information. And increasingly, not only will the competitive landscape shed light on demand for your community, but the labor market conditions are also important to consider in terms of pending staff challenges. So checking the local job boards may also show that a competitor may be struggling one way or another, be in the process of adding services or even expanding. Good source of information. I should also mention Glassdoor as a source of internal intelligence. Glassdoor is a website that allows current and past employees to rate their employment experiences, and you can actually find some pretty juicy information in here that can shed light on a competitor's work culture. Interesting. And finally, as I alluded to earlier, there are a number of highly reputable paid subscription services like NICMAP. This is a data service that my not-for-profit company, NIC, offers. NICMAP data service, the slide I'm showing you is a snippet of a Metro report. NICMAP provides market data for the seniors housing and care sector, including operators and investors. NICMAP supplies data from more than 14,000 properties across 140 U.S. metro markets. This particular service breaks down the data by property type, care segments. It's updated quarterly, monthly, and weekly, and provides property level inventory by unit type, provides sales transactions, construction activity, and a whole lot more. So the next section that I want to talk about is the organization and presentation of the data and why that's important. I can't stress enough that clear visual communication is super important when presenting data to your team, staff, or management. Side-by-side comparisons are often very helpful and quickly digested. Maps are useful, and narratives are also usually well received. I wanted to show you a quick example of a data collection worksheet that you can put together for yourself. I recommend putting together a data collection template that will help you stay organized and ensure your questions get answered. So a form like this can be filled out and kept in a competitor file, and the data from multiple communities can be combined into worksheets, tables, and graphs for side-by-side analysis. Good organization tool. This is a quick example of a narrative style reporting of competitor information. Another way to present the data has a combination of text, pictures, and table elements, and this is attractive, it's fast and easy to read. And I recommend laying out your information in a simple visual so that you and your teams can quickly get up to speed on key differences in service offerings in the marketplace. With a table like this, basically this is a reference tool at a glance. For example, the table is showing a side-by-side comparison of the communities and their key competitor services that are included in the resident fees in this case. Reading this table, I could quickly see that community 2 and 3 provide less housekeeping per month than the subject, and that community 4 includes internet service and the subject does not. It's a good reference tool for your sales force. And lastly, I want to show you that this is just another quick example of a side-by-side comparison table. It's not filled out, but it does, if you look along the left-hand side, it does provide a lot of key information into a small area that can be easily scanned by community or by item type. So in summary, in conducting your desktop competitive intelligence project, do be sure you use all the tools that are publicly available. Don't be, and there are a lot of them, don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call those that have the information you're seeking. Consider sharing information with your competitors. Perhaps work together to save time when that time of the year rolls around and the market plan needs to be updated. Be creative. Organize the data for quick visual understanding. Make sure when you do that, though, to include dates when the data was collected and plan for collecting updates. And if you do all this, you'll be very well prepared for your site visits. And with the hard data already collected, during the site visits, you can focus on more of the soft or the subjective aspects of competitive analysis. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott.
Lana, that's terrific. Thanks. This is Katie. I'm going to jump in here because this is your second Caring.com commercial. I apologize, but you know we offer free content, so you got to sit through the commercials. This is an example of a portal that is available to any Caring.com client. It gives you a way to see which of the leads we sent were closed by your community and which ones by competitors. So you can see that, for example, competitor number 1 is closing memory care leads when you're not, and competitor number 2 is closing the 2 bedrooms when you're not. So it's a great tool to use. We've recently released an update, and if you haven't tried this yet and don't have access to it, talk to your client services person or message me privately afterwards and we'll make sure you get it. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Scott. And Scott, I'm going to try to give you control here. Let's see if this works this time.
Okay.
And if not, I'll drive.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, it worked. Okay, great. Well, thanks, Katie, and great information, Lana. I've been doing this for a long time, and from yesterday's rehearsal and today, I learned a ton. So appreciate that. What I'm going to do over the next 15 or 20 minutes is to focus on the in-person collection, just exactly where Lana left off, and I'll talk about 3 options, including toward the end, you're conducting your own clandestine intelligence, but also talk about some other options that are out there. The overall topic's competition, and for me, I kind of come at things from a strategic perspective. So I look at competitor information and acknowledge the importance of, for example, a salesperson having as much information as they can about what other product is available in the marketplace, because that makes for a better salesperson and increases the likelihood of their selling. But I think of it in the context of competitive advantage. And I guess the best way to phrase this, although it's going to sound trite, is that when you're investing the time that you will or already are doing, or the dollars, you certainly should be ensuring that you're not just keeping up, but you're getting ahead of, or in some cases remaining ahead of the pack. And as we get toward the end of this, if I have time, I'll circle back a little bit more to talk about that. The map on the right is kind of the traditional map that you might see when you start determining who your competitors are. So in this particular case, the image got a little scrunched here, but that would be, I don't know, a 10-mile radius or 5-mile radius of this particular location, and they've plotted out who they believe the competition is. They're doing it by geography, location, and they're doing it by type of community. In other words, are they offering multiple levels of care? Are they CCRC or life plan community? Is it assisted living, and so forth? And you know, I can start there and say that sounds perfectly rational, and probably all of us on this call would agree with that. But for me, the definition of who's actually competitive can really only be understood by talking with the consumer, and that's what I'm trying to illustrate in the upper left-hand portion. So when I'm doing a market analysis or a strategic plan, pretty much the first group I want to talk to are the folks who have made a decision to move to the community. And even in a strategic plan, I'm frankly less likely about what they think ought to be done in the future, because most of them would confess that they're not buying green bananas, as they tend to say. And I'll probably spend 2/3 of the time in a focus group discussing how they made decisions, why they made decisions, and importantly, who else they considered. Who did they talk to? Who did they visit? And what did they think about those other organizations? Because, yeah, they've made a decision to move to our community, but they're still pretty discriminating consumers. And so whether it's a family member in assisted living or whether it's the older adult in a CCRC, for me, they're going to define who I need to hone in on in terms of competition. Now, the best information, I think, would come from the people who chose another community, but that's harder to get, and maybe we'll have time during Q&A to talk about that a little bit. Really valuable but hard to get, and maybe the subject of another webinar for another day. So my takeaway on this is that while geography tells us one thing about who our competitors are, the consumer doesn't particularly care about geography. I mean, they do in a way, you know, it's close to home, close to where their family is, but they're making decisions based on things well beyond that. So Lana did a good job, and I appreciated what she showed as a couple of worksheets of where you might collect the information and data, so I'm not going to repeat that. But I guess the message I wanted to produce here was that as you're preparing to visit a competitor, or even if you're going to have someone else do it, be clear what you want to know or understand. And Lana talked about, you know, when you've got all the hard data, you can focus on the soft data, and that's absolutely right. And I'm going to talk most of my time about that. But what I've also found is that site visit also gives you the opportunity to fill in. So kind of the two F's, you can focus on the soft information of culture and appearance and things like that, but you can also fill in some data that still might be missing from your comprehensive online review and your telephone calls. Point here, I think, is that when you're out there looking at the competitive communities, what you're looking for from community to community may actually be different. I mean, yeah, there's going to be some things that are similar. You know, what's the appearance, what's the curb appeal, so to speak, et cetera. but you might really want to bore in on a particular area because it's just come up as a huge question mark for you. And I think in the ideal world we'd expect that we'd walk into a campus or a building and someone would be more than happy to spend an hour with us and tell us everything that we wanted to know. But that's pretty unusual. So our focus gets us better information as we're out there collecting it. So 3 ways. The direct approach, and I'll talk about that first. It's basically you're exchanging data with a competitor. I call it being straight up and being open, and Lana mentioned that, so I'll dive into that in just a little bit of detail. The second is your use of a mystery shopper or another third party, and I'll explain what I mean by that. And the last area that I'll touch on is how you might do the information collection on your own. So let's dive into the substance there. And we'll talk about the direct collection. And before, or as we do that, I think it's important to talk about antitrust, and price fixing, and collusion. One of the things that I have as part of my background is I'm an attorney. I still have my law license. I don't technically practice, but I am one, although I don't confess that to a lot of folks. But I'm not pretending to provide you with legal advice today, so please don't keep it that way. Your counsel's perspective and the advice that she or he might provide is really what ought to matter. But when you're dealing directly with a competitor and you're gathering information, this is going to be a consideration. And I think particularly for the larger organizations who may be part of our audience today, who need to draw some bright lines to ensure that some maverick marketing director or executive director isn't out there violating antitrust rules or laws in the interest of trying to gain some advantage. So probably each of us on this webinar have heard at least anecdotally what the law is on this topic. I'm not going to go through the case law, but I do want to read you something because I think it's important. Here's the law, and I'm paraphrasing to a bit. Price fixing, and hone in on that word fixing. Price fixing is an agreement. You can hone in on agreement. And it's agreement in writing, it's an agreement that's verbal, or it's an agreement that could be inferred from conduct among competitors that raises, lowers, or stabilizes prices or competitive terms. So the key here is an agreement, or the appearance or inference of an agreement. For example, it's a violation to agree with your competitor that you'll increase prices by 5% this year if they agree to do the same. Now, I know that nobody does that out there, but it's actually happened. So that's kind of a very clear violation. And that would be particularly egregious, and you're waving a flag to get the attention of the FEC, or the regulators, because it happens on a state level as well as a federal level. Particularly egregious if there's 2 competitors in town or 3. Well, how about collecting fee information and then sharing it with the other competitors? So whether you're out there on your own and you're talking directly to somebody and you're saying, hey, Scott, if you give me all the detail on your fees and your square footage and the products and services that you offer, I'll give you the results of my my entire survey. Actually makes perfect sense and frankly happens all of the time. But it starts to lay a path toward an inferred agreement. And I'm not saying that it's a violation, but it starts to lay a path toward the inferred agreement. What's not illegal is to collect information for your own use, and fees are just part of that. I guess the thing I wanted to add here is if you're out there collecting information about fees and you're sharing it with a direct competitor, and for each of you it's 30 days before your budgets are due, then you're probably waving the flag of saying you know what, we collected it. Why did you collect it? Well, gee, our budget was due, and in the end, we were using it to gauge our information. So my very practical piece of advice here is, if you're going to do this directly and you're going to do it on your own, do it in the middle of the year. Or do it in the beginning of the year after prices have already been set, but do not do it in the month that you're going to be determining prices. Let me talk about mystery shop and third parties. There are people and firms out there who do a great job at mystery shopping. Frankly, for my money, if I'm going to engage one, and if I were a provider, and I don't provide this service, so I'm not marketing myself, but if I were a provider, I'd probably use a mystery shopper because I've seen the value of really good ones. On the other hand, I've seen how bad the work is of people who are really bad at it, who don't have knowledge of senior living or senior housing. So I'm going to want to know who's actually going to be doing the calls and the on-site work, and I'll make a judgment about that. Point being, don't just accept that, hey, we're a great firm, we'll do good work for you, trust us, but ask to talk to the people who will actually be doing the work. Oh, you know, one of the things I was thinking about the other day is that with the aging of the baby boomers today, and I was thinking about folks in the field, I have this sense that with the retirements that are happening, that we're going to get a great crop of mystery shoppers out there, largely composed of people who used to run marketing agencies or did sales for CCRCs or assisted living, because they'll finally be of the right age and they won't have to be lying about why they're asking for the info. But not every time a third party is collecting information is it a mystery shopper. It's also done routinely, as Lana has done in her experience, and I do all the time in mine, is when you're doing a market analysis or a feasibility study, typically you've got a third party out there collecting information. Let me talk a little bit about how I do things, not to say that it's the best way, but it's maybe 25 years of learning that I can share with you. When I'm making contact on site, I want to know specifically what I'm looking for. So I've done my homework, I've got my hard data, and now I'm very clear on what I need, and that tells me how much time I need to spend at the community, and it also tells me who I might ask for, because if it's pretty straightforward info, I may just try to see what I get from the receptionist, because they're typically not as schooled in the sales approach as the sales and marketing directors are, and I can find out an awful lot from them. In other instances, I may need to be talking to the marketing director or a salesperson, and in some rare instances, I might want to talk to an executive director. Now, I think there's 3 ways to do this, and probably more than 3, but 3 that really occurred to me. You can lie about who you are. You can say, I'm looking for a place for my mom, or as you get to be what I am, which is an aging baby boomer, you can finally say you're looking for yourself. Lots of people do this. They lie. I've had a bunch of people who worked for me who did that. That was their preferred approach, and frankly, it scared the hell out of me, because I always thought if you lie that often and you lie that easily, what ultimately does that say about your personality or your persona? But at times, it's a way to get information, particularly if you think you can carry it off. But you know, marketing and sales directors in particular are used to this, and they can usually sniff out who's pretending to be a consumer when they're really not. The other is what I call the truthful approach, and I'll give you an example. It's not unusual for me to walk into a building and say, I'm Scott Townsley, I'm a consultant. I'll give them my card so they know I'm for real. I'm doing a market study in the area. I've heard great things about your community. Do you have a few minutes to show me what everyone is raving about? Now, obviously, I'm playing to whoever I'm able to talk to, but you know, it actually works. Now, sometimes that won't work. They'll blow me off and say, oh, I don't have time to talk to a consultant. And at that point, I might offer up some other options, which would be, well, look, I'll send you a copy of the summary when I'm done. Wouldn't that be of some interest to you? And usually that'll hook them in. And the last is what I call as the blended approach, and I guess I call it a white lie as well. And when I'm doing that, I might be saying I'm a consultant. I'm doing a market study in a town 15 miles ago, or I'm doing a study for a level of service that's different than the one that is being provided here. I might play dumb a little bit, but I'd share with you that it has worked. And for me, the bottom line on this is you're making a judgment in a split second because you're determining, hey, who am I talking to? What are they likely to respond to? Is it the straight up, I'm shopping for my mother, or is it going to be one of the other opportunities? But one of the learnings I had a long time ago was it's a lot easier to get some information out of a salesperson who's used to conveying information than it is out of an executive director who's not. And then let me begin to close by talking about what about your own clandestine gathering of information. I think this is the toughest because Lana talked about having a direct conversation, sharing information, and I applaud that. I think that's a healthy way to go. If that's not working for you for some reason, and you decide you're going to get out in the field and you're going to conduct it on your own, I think that's tough because typically people are going to know who you are, or you're going to have folks later on who figure out that was you who walked into their building and pretended you were someone else. So maybe somebody from corporate can accomplish this, and note I made for myself here was that whether it's corporate or whether it's somebody on your staff or you, be really careful about using the hey, I'm shopping for my mother approach, because eventually I think that's going to come back to haunt you. And the last thing I'd mention about this is one of the problems of doing this kind of information retrieval is the lack of objectivity. Yeah, in all the hard data, it doesn't matter whether you're objective or subjective. You're getting the information, and that's fine. But when you're there for the soft information or the soft data, it is just a reality that you're going to have a bias toward what you provide versus what they provide. So as I close out here, I like this quote from Jack Welch: if you don't have a competitive advantage, don't compete. And, I was thinking about this and saying, we could collect an awful lot of data, and if we don't know what we're going to do with it or what case we're making as a result of this, or we lack the objectivity, we've really wasted a lot of time and effort. A board member asked the chief marketing officer and the chief executive officer of a CCRC recently and said, what's your competitive advantage, or what's our competitive advantage? And there was like silence for a little bit, and the response was, well, we have a really friendly staff. And the board member kind of looked at them and said, that's it? And they said, well, we don't have clicks among our residents, and we know they have clicks at these 2 or 3 other competitors that are there. And one of the things I noticed was the board member wasn't buying it at all. In fact, the other board members, I was watching them, they weren't buying it. And not only was there no empirical evidence of that, there was no evidence whatsoever. So I've been watching that, and as I work with groups, I was with a senior leadership team of a single-site life plan community, and I use the term Cheerios versus oat cereal to describe when somebody knows what their competitive advantage is versus when they don't. For example, people will spend more money to buy Cheerios because it's different, it's unique, it's believed to be better than oat cereal. People who buy oat cereal buy on price. So obviously you want to be Cheerios, you don't want to be oat cereal. A lot of us, by the way, end up being oat cereal. So I asked the leadership team, I figured they should know best, were they Cheerios or were they oat cereal? What was their competitive advantage? The response was, and this is going to go back to the comment I just made, response of these very intelligent people working day in and day out on strategy and marketing and service delivery and all of those things, was that their staff was the friendliest. And so I let them go on for a while, and then I had a couple of clients who were in that market area who had worked with, not currently, but in the past. And I said, I think the the competitors would find it kind of interesting that you think your staff is friendlier than theirs, because the reality is it's not the case. So looking at all of the data, the information, the hard stuff and the soft stuff comes to some point of usefulness. And I liked Lana's comparison. I'm going to use this sort of comparison that I picked up from a Harvard Business Review article that I'll give you the citation over on the right-hand side, and this will be available to you. What they're basically saying is, yeah, this is all go into determining your strengths and weaknesses, and to a lesser degree your opportunities and threats. But rather than just saying, well, our strengths are this and our weaknesses are that, the discipline is to say, this is where we're strong, this is where another organization may be strong, and this is how we all compare. So the objectivity becomes key, because what you can see on the left-hand side is the scoring that's been applied here. The last thing I'll say, and it was really one of the first things I opened with, is that determining what the criteria is, because this is criteria that was just taken from the Harvard Business Review article. Sure, that can be an exercise of the leadership team sitting around and saying what's important as we compare ourselves to others. But I go back to that discussion with the consumer, and when we listen to what they're saying is important, the factors that they use when they're making decisions, then we're really matching up good data, hard and soft, with the decision making of the consumer. And for me, that's the bottom line in competitor analysis. So thank you.
That was great, Scott. Thanks for that. We're going to move now. We've got a few minutes. So I would encourage anyone who has a question for our panelists to go ahead and ask it. I actually have a question, and I'm going to put this out to both of you. Thoughts on putting your pricing on your website. This is a big topic that people talk about from a lot of different angles. I know what I think. I've heard what consumers think. I'm wondering what you think. You know, Lana mentioned that it's a great way to get competitive intelligence if your competitor has their price on the website. What do you guys think? Yes or no?
I think that really just depends on your sales philosophy, like you said, Katie. You have your own idea about it. I'm sure others do as well. You know, one school of thought is that if you give out too much information, people won't come, and you can't tell them what the value of your community is. On the other side, I know people like myself, being kind of the adult child age, if that information isn't online, I'm not really interested in pursuing it. I want to have as much information as I can possibly get before I go down the road of spending my time, you know, tracking things down. So I think it really just depends on your sales philosophy. What do you think, Scott?
First of all, I was glad you took the lead on that. And secondly, I really agree. I think the one sort of refinement that I might make, you know, first of all, so I agree. It depends on the sales philosophy, and I think in a lot of ways that ought to kind of rule the day. So I'd be reluctant to give an absolute here. On the other hand, I think what you might have been starting to express, Lana, is I think that if we're not doing that as the baby boomer becomes our predominant consumer, it is going to be off-putting. And so even if your sales philosophy is we're not going to include it on our website, that you give that person the opportunity to ask a question. They're probably going to ask about fees. And if the response is delayed, you know, if it's 24 hours later, if it's 12 hours later, I think that's going to be a real problem, and more of a problem in the future perhaps than it is today. So, you know, the live engagement on through the website, I think becomes increasingly important as we move through the next decade.
Yeah, and that's my feeling too. Here's a quick question, Lana. I think you talked about how exactly would you find a disclosure statement. You mentioned Emma as a source of that. do you just go to Google and type in disclosure statement and then the name of the company?
Yes, that actually was one of the slides that I showed. It was the result of a Google search. I put disclosure statement. I don't think I did it in this case because I wanted to be sensitive to other communities, but you can put the name of the community in quotes as well. And sometimes with transparency these days, communities are putting their disclosure statements online as part of their websites or in some other capacity. It can be searched with a search engine. Emma is also good. Mystery shopping, you can often get disclosure statements just by asking for them because it is public information. So I would highly recommend anytime you're doing a competitive analysis to look for the disclosure statement first, because it really does entail an amazing amount of information about the community, about the community's future, and you know, most of what you're looking for is going to be in that package.
Okay. In terms of collaborating with your competitors, what do you think about going to the sales director for a neighboring community and saying, essentially, I'll do a tour for you if you'll do a tour for me? Is there any problem with that?
I don't think so. Frankly, I think that an informed sales staff is going to be a better sales staff.
Here's one. What if you pick up on somebody mystery shopping you? So if you know it's a mystery shopper, how do you handle that?
Well, I'd say let's start with kindly and politely, because there's a chance that it's not a mystery shopper, and so you don't want to make an accusation and turn out that this person actually is the daughter of a prospective resident. She just happens to have, 20 years of experience in the senior living field, so she's asking these questions that you wouldn't ordinarily expect. So I'd tread really lightly. I guess my point is, what do you win by kind of pulling the cloak off? Not too much. And so if you think that they're a mystery shopper, you can certainly tailor your answers and press for information about how you might be getting in contact with them and so forth. But I'm just really cautious about saying that's me. I know exactly who you are, you son of a gun.
Okay. And then we do have a couple minutes, Scott. You mentioned some thoughts about how to get to people who didn't choose you initially.
Yeah.
You want to take a minute or two and just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, let me insert one thing first, and then I'll talk about that. One of the things that I look for, and it's typically really observable and easy, but it's so telltale, is even when I walk through the front door. Yeah, I'm sure you're looking at is staff really friendly, or is it a hallucination that the leadership team has? But I'm looking at the residents who are there, who are either walking by, who are using a particular activity center, maybe sitting in the lobby waiting for something. And I'm kind of, I'm not a clinical person, but I can size up whether, this place is a CCRC, but clearly they're serving a very old and frail population. And if that's the case, that's going to tell me a lot about a variety of things. So I didn't want to miss that. Sometimes we're fixated on the buildings and the size of units and the common areas and things like that, but just observing the residents themselves really will tell you a lot, that either directly or from an inference basis. So I think of it as, I guess I labeled it a lost leads survey, and it's pretty painful in this sense that sure, sales staff and marketing staff always want to know why somebody else made another choice. But at the point that happens, it's really hard to get that information. And if you do get it, it's really hard to get it honestly because people have this sense of kindness, and they're turning you down in essence, so they want to let you down lightly, as opposed to saying, I thought your dining room was the sloppiest room I've seen in any CCRC that I'm visited. They might think that, but they're never going to say it. They'll say, I thought it was a better fit, for example. So two ways I get at it. One is that I'll tell people, look, we'll do a lost lead survey. Give me your last 50 people who either dropped off the radar screen or who made a different decision, and I'll follow up with them. I'll be clear that we're not selling. And if I get 20% of those 50, that's a pretty good return. But I assure you that you'll get, particularly if you got a third party doing it, you'll get really good, solid information. It's the most honest information about why you were turned down. And you know what? That's understandable for the reasons I just mentioned. But it's also understandable that when a sale is lost, the salesperson's moving on to the next one. Or frankly, that's what they ought to be doing, because particularly on their commission, they ought to move on to the next one. And that big picture of why are we losing sales isn't necessarily at the top of their list. And the second way I tend to get at it, this is a little bit easier, is I'll ask to do a focus group or two of people who have inquired about a community, say in the last 6 months, but who haven't taken any steps toward moving in or even advancing through the process. And sometimes we'll need to incent them to come, with a gift certificate or something like that. Other times we won't. And usually I have pretty good success of getting people to come out, at least if the weather's decent, if you're in a snow area kind of thing. And those folks who have not made a decision to, hey, I'm going to pick your community, I'm just not ready yet, those who haven't made that decision, who are still thinking about it, in my experience, tend to be brutally honest. And when I say to them, and I'll just use the Life Plan community as an example, when I say to them, the holy grail of a Life Plan community is to get somebody your age, it's typically the case, somebody your age to move in. What's keeping you from doing that? They'll give you a real straight answer. And, so the lost lead and then not yet a lead piece of information I find to be really valuable.
Okay. Great. Thank you all. I'm going to put in a quick plug here for our next webcast. It's a little later this month on senior care reviews, how to get them and respond to them. I hope you'll join us. It's with Denise Grubb, my colleague, who always does a fantastic job and delivers just a ton of information. So hopefully we'll see you in a couple weeks. And thank you so much, Scott and Lana. This was a great font of information. I learned a lot. I hope you did too. And thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time. If you need to reach me, here's my contact information. Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining us.